It's the After Show with TelecomTV's Guy Daniels and Ray Maistre.
Hello and welcome to the After Show, the final program of day 2 of the DSP Leaders Summit on Openran. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content at TelecomTV, and we are live on TelecomTV and also broadcasting to your favourite social media outlets. Joining me on the After Show is TelecomTV Editorial Director Ray Maistre. Hi Ray, welcome to our virtual networking bar. Have you tried the chicken vol au vents yet? They are outstanding.
Well, Guy, I'm used to plenty of puff in this industry, so a little bit of puff pastry is just adding to the whole mix. But seriously, it's been another great day of Openran Summit content with great interviews and great panels discussions. And I'm looking forward to more of this on the next 45 minutes of live Q&A banter.
Indeed, and for that we need the help of our audience. Submit your questions now using the Q&A widget on the After Show Summit page. And while you're there, please do take a look at our poll, which is already throwing up some very interesting results on Openran technology. Okay, time to meet our guests. And joining us in today's After Show are Franz Seiser, VP of Access Disaggregation at Deutsche Telekom. Geetha, Global Head of Telco Solution Incubations with Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Colin Bryce, Director of Mobile Network Engineering at CommScope. And Johannes Tafesi, who is Technical Solutions Architect, Global Service Provider for Worldwide Technology, WWT. Welcome everyone. Now, whilst our online audience gets busy with sending in their questions, I'd like to continue a conversation that we had yesterday because we've already received a lot of emails about this, and that's the role of industry investment to encourage ecosystem development. Ray, are we wrong in trying to force the expansion of an Openran ecosystem? And isn't it the case that successful ecosystems emerge organically to supply the demands of the marketplace?
Yes, well, I think it's absolutely true that there's going to that demand will lead to the creation of new startups and new innovations as well in existing companies. I'm not sure that there's so much of a force going on in the industry. I don't think anybody's trying to push things too much. I think there's more encouragement, especially coming from the major operators who I think are trying to communicate exactly what capabilities they want from the technology sector. But quite whether there is anybody is trying to force the market too much, I'm not totally sure. But let's get some opinions from today's panelists. So, Colin, do you think there's a bit too much focus at the moment on the need for new investment or different types of investment for Openran startups or Openran R&D?
No, I don't really think so. I think this is more an instance of technology is beginning to develop that allows this software and hardware disaggregation. And I doubt if any technologist realistically thinks that, say, in 10 years' time, the bulk of telecom services won't be delivered in a virtualized environment on a commercial off-the-shelf hardware. And I think all that's happening is that the industry is developing the processes and the standardization. And in telecoms industry, we've always been driven by standards. And we're simply developing the standards that allows the industry to exploit this technological innovation and development to the maximum. And sometimes in our industry, we can get a little bit over enthusiastic about things, but then at some point, the sort of virtuous aspects come together. So, just as an example, we're now completely used to remote radio heads, and most people would say this is the best way to deploy radio on a cell site. That was discussed for 10 years or so before it actually happened. But it took the point where the technology got to a stage that you could integrate tightly enough to get low volume product. You could get it efficient enough that it didn't need active cooling. And then you were able to put a product on the top of the tower, and a tipping point came, and it happened very quickly. And I think the same thing's going to happen with virtualization and open interconnectivity. We're developing it based on a technology, and we'll reach a tipping point. But I don't think anybody's forcing this. I think the industry's coming together to move in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely momentum behind Open RAN in a way now that there wasn't 12 or 24 months ago. So, Johannes, do you think there's a bit too much pressure at all on the market to focus on new developments around the Open RAN space?
Like I was saying earlier, I think we have to remember that the whole Open RAN concept is really being driven by service providers who at the end of the day will be buying this technology that will help them stay competitive and provide the type of service, the quality of service that is being demanded by the market. So I don't think there is a lot of push there. And we also have to remember at this point, mobile communication, wireless communication is critical infrastructure, right? There's a lot of money that's already spent on it. A lot of businesses rely on it. So it's only fair to make sure there is alignment, right? Standardization, and we move cautiously. And I think that's what's happening in the industry today. So I think it's only fair that there is consensus and everybody's involved in this transformation of the mobile network.
Okay, excellent. So unless Geetha or Franz want to join in on this, we can go to the next question. Guy.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. And Franz, I think I'll direct this one at you first, if I can. It's a question that keeps popping up over and over, and we've had several viewer questions about this already. Is there one major universally accepted benefit for adopting Open RAN? Now, this was covered on today's panels, and we heard everything from disaggregation, CapEx, procurement, innovation. We heard a range of benefits, but do you think that there's one clear benefit, or is it a combination of multiple wins?
I think it's the latter. It's a combination of multiples. And as you said, it has been discussed up and down and left and right today and before, and we will discuss that again and again. All this about flexibility, competition, resilience, cost, of course. But I think bottom line, the one big enabler that comes with Open RAN, in fact, is automation. And that's, of course, strongly linked to be more efficient, to provide better experience, to react faster, to provide a more diversified experience to customers, and all done on a good cost base. And the secret sauce, so to say, on that topic is automation. So if you ask me to bring down the key benefit of putting all the things together, I would talk about automation here being the ultimate benefit that comes with Open RAN in the access space. Of course, it has to come in other areas of the network as well. But for access, Open RAN is the key enabler to bring that also on that part of the network.
Okay, Franz, that's great. So automation, but obviously a lot more benefits as well in other areas. Geetha, can I turn to you and follow up on this question, really, because you spoke on the panel about assumed costs, which has really got me thinking. Can you elaborate on what you mean by this and how Open RAN factors in here?
Right. A lot of times people ask a question of whether going to an open disaggregated architecture is going to increase the cost. Most of the time, operators look to the TCO and say, is there a TCO in me going to an Open RAN type of architecture? And they keep asking about the hidden costs. What are the hidden costs? And my answer to that has been, it's not hidden cost. It is assumed cost. What I mean by that is the cost of some of these things, like whether, the simple, obvious ones, like the acquisition costs of the hardware, software, etc., and then the system integration, the support, the services, these costs always existed. Today they exist. It's not like those costs don't exist. This open disaggregation, this open architecture just makes it all much more visible. So now you have multiple parties. So you're going from one neck to choke to the wild, wild west, as I call it. And so you have multiple parties that you have to deal with, multiple procurement processes and multiple parties to come together with a solution. And that makes it look like the cost is much higher and there are hidden costs that we weren't aware of, that these costs are now becoming much more open. But that is not the case. It has always been there. It is just a different model. And therefore, I call it the assumed cost guy. Great.
Thanks for that, Geetha. Thanks for explaining that. And Johannes, you'd like to come in on this question as well?
Yeah, I mean, first I want to say great point, Geetha. I completely agree with that. But when we talk about the benefits of Openran, like you say, the disaggregation, OPEX reduction, CAPEX reduction are all great points. But I think the primary benefit here is what we like to call, I guess, quote unquote, future-proofing the network. In a sense, we're saying, great, the interfaces are open now, right? You can also rely on software. So it's easier to update and upgrade your network down the line when new technologies come. I think that's a great benefit because so far, service providers typically have had to upgrade hardware, right? Rip and replace things. If we can simplify that, I think that translates into a lot of the benefits that we kind of talked about. So I think that's the intrinsic benefit that comes with opening interfaces and allowing vendors to play nice with each other.
Good point. Thanks for that one. We should move on, I think, because we're getting a lot of questions coming in. Ray, anything from you?
Yep, absolutely. Here's one that came in earlier. So there's been a lot of talk in the past about Open RAN's use, particularly in rural wide area networks initially. But here's a question. How can Open RAN play a role in small cells or indoor or in-building deployments in mature markets? Could that be a starting point for urban deployments? So, Colin, I'm pretty sure that you will have a view on this. So what do you think?
Well, certainly there's no reason that Open RAN shouldn't play a part in the continued deployment of indoor coverage solutions and campus coverage solutions. Our group that works in small cell and distributed antenna systems is certainly currently looking at how they embed the principles of Open RAN into their future product roadmaps. And I think particularly where we think that a lot of specialist coverage solutions are now being deployed not by the MNOs, but by neutral hosts. So companies that own the equipment themselves and simply provide the service on behalf of the MNOs. And particularly in some larger type deployments such as shopping centres, airports, etc., the building owners, the service owners want to have all the operators within that coverage solution. And Open RAN offers a way in which that can be done by the neutral hosts, but also providing a throughput for the individual services to be delivered through things like network slicing. So it's early days, but we certainly would not discount Open RAN moving forward and delivering that type of capability in indoor coverage. I'd also suggest that the initial deployments of Open RAN in 5G could potentially be small cell intensification because the timing is such that perhaps the initial macro coverage layer of 5G, and certainly in urban environments, may be deployed by the time real 5G Open RAN is available. And then the sort of heterogeneous lower layer may be the first opportunity to deploy Open RAN 5G.
Yeah, no, that's all sounds like very valid views there. Franz, do you have a view on this from the Deutsche Telekom point of view? Do you see you looking at Openran indoor as well?
As well brings it to the point. Yeah, of course, it can and will play a role there, but honestly, this is not our number one priority at this point in time. We really push and drive to make it ready for prime time in a macro deployment. So that's simply our priority today, and I know we are not the only ones having that kind of priority setting. But of course, it will play a role. That's very obvious.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so Guy, what have we got coming down the pipe next? What is our next question from today's audience?
Yes, thank you, Ray. The next one, again, it's a follow-up to a point that was covered in today's panel, and it's about power consumption. If the radio components take up to 90% of power consumption in the RAN, does Openran have a role to play in trying to reduce this? Because telcos will, sooner or later, especially with the rollout of 5G, be compelled to do more about power usage, and they're going to need their vendors to do their part. Well, that's the question we've got in. Geetha, perhaps I should start with you because you were on that panel today.
Yes, absolutely. So this goes back to the very first question that was asked, right, Guy, about the benefits of Open RAN. I mean, what is in it for the vendors in terms of innovation with Open RAN? I mean, is the ecosystem being forced to do Open RAN, or is this beneficial for the ecosystem? And I would say innovation is one thing that will be fostered through Open RAN. Absolutely. And radio space is one where, my colleague here from CommScope and my colleague on the panel from Nokia, I mean, all of these companies are doing innovation in the radio space. And that is something that will improve. And we see that already with the newer technologies coming in. I think this was a question on the panel with respect to going green and, how are we going to do that with the footprint increasing and all that. And that's how we do it, is fostering the innovation. There are a lot of startups that are looking at this from how to reduce power for the radios. And this will continue to happen over time. We already hear from a number of startups about this as to how they have reduced the power of the radios, and that's what's going to happen over time. That is something absolutely to look forward to.
Good, thank you, Geetha. And I'm going to go to, well, Colin, I'll come to you in a moment, but Franz, let me start with you and get your views on this.
So let me be very clear here from a customer perspective. Openran has to deliver on power consumptions. We all have very tough CO2 targets. We have to do power reduction. It's no secret power consumption is one of the major cost blocks in a radio network. So it has to go down. And of course the assumption and is an expectation by disaggregating the thing in different blocks, so different companies can bring in their knowledge and IP, be it on the hardware side, be it on the software side, because power is not a pure hardware thing. Software plays a large role also in power consumption, be it in having the right mechanisms to steer the radio, turning on and off frequency layers and all these kind of things together. Putting all this together, having companies specializing in different areas and competing there with other specialized ones, there is a big expectation and I think very realistic hope that Openran will kickstart here and lead to drastically lower numbers as we go forward. Is it there today? No, but that was not expected, but we expect a very steep development in that area.
Thank you, Franz. Yes, let's hope so. Colin.
Yes, I agree with the last speaker. I mean, the two key areas I think that Openran can help in this are, one, the market for innovative solutions in say the silicon space, the PA space. That suddenly becomes a much broader market. You don't have to get embedded into one of 3 or 4 major development programs. There's an ecosystem of product vendors that you can take those innovations to and get embedded into product, and if that's proven quickly, then the market will expand quickly. So I think the integration and commoditization of the radio itself is a great opportunity to reduce power and make those more efficient. I think the other area, as was mentioned, really is in this management of the network and software-defined network management around switching on and off, using things like AI and machine learning to grow knowledge about when capacity is really needed in particular geographies, when you can move capacity, and then potentially long term, the fact that you can pool that capacity in a central location means the networking should become generally more efficient. So I think there are several ways in which the Openran can certainly kickstart more efficient networks.
Thank you, Colin. We are at about the halfway stage in our program, so we should take a quick break from the questions and have a look at the latest polling numbers. Ray, what are we seeing so far?
Okay, so this is the poll question that we have put to our Openran Summit audience on the TelecomTV website. We asked the question, when will an Openran architecture be able to deliver an equivalent carrier-grade performance to that of traditional radio access network systems? And so let's look at the results. So as yesterday, when we looked at the poll, the favourite response at the moment is by 2024. And we've just got just over 40% there. And this is maybe not a surprise, as there's an awful lot of momentum going on now in Openran. There's operators talking about deployments, and that then is driving more and more R&D and more investment from the vendor side of things to get the Openran systems up to par with what's already out there. And a very ambitious, almost 12% here, suggesting that it already can. But it's still a nice mix, I think, of responses. Including right down at the bottom, we've got more than 8% for after 2030. That's more than 10 years away, which is a long time right now in tech development. And another more than 8% saying it will never match the capabilities of traditional radio access network systems. So I'd be interested to know from our panel today if anybody thinks that these results are in any way surprising. Did anybody expect to see a lot more people voting for never or after 2030 at all? Or is this what you expected? Any thoughts at all?
I would say if you had an option that said 2022 or 2023, you'd get more of that. I think when you talk about Openran, people also kind of tie that with vRAN, right? Virtualization, which is a great point. But for the people that say never, one thing to note is that Openran at a minimum can be implemented, right, on hardware basis at this point, right? So you're basically opening interfaces. So I think it's highly unlikely to think that at least that would not happen down the line.
All right. Okay. Well, please do continue to vote in the poll. It's there on the website. We've still got another day and a bit to go with the duration of the summit. So please go and add your voice to those poll answers, and we'll see what we come out with by the end of the event. So Guy, back over to you.
Thank you, Ray. Yes, indeed. If you haven't already done so, as Ray says, please take part in the poll. It's a bit of fun, but it's informative as well, and it gives us a good sense of what our community is thinking. And you can still send in your questions. We've still got about 20 minutes or so to go for our program now. So we'll answer as many of them as we can today. And if not, we have one more after show program this week. That's coming up tomorrow. Right, onwards, Ray. Do we have any new questions from our audience?
Yes, we got a question came in. We've had a flood of questions actually during the course of the last half hour. But we did have a question earlier on. Does the recent postponement of Mavenir's IPO, as well as recent skeptical comments from the CTO of T-Mobile USA suggests that Open RAN is perhaps an overhyped technology, or are the positive predictions from the likes of ABI Research realistic? So, are we on the hype cycle at the moment with Open RAN? Is a little bit too much being expected of deployments and of capabilities and of the Open RAN technology community? Anybody have any thoughts on this, on perhaps the hyperbole around Open RAN?
I think we are somewhere near the top of the hype cycle, definitely. So there's a lot of talk, but I believe there is a solid basis. There is so much requested. We see more and more operators committing to it, trying it out. We do it ourselves. We see where it is. We see how it progresses. And as you just mentioned, our friends from the US. Of course, if you want to roll out the full-fledged 5G network today, as we speak, Open RAN would not be ready for it. That's as your poll showed, 24, maybe a bit earlier. That's the point in time. But if you need to deploy it today in large scale, it's a bit too early. So from that perspective, his statement is perfectly correct. Today, it's not there, but it will be there rather soon.
Okay, and Colin.
Well, I was just. It depends, what you mean by the hype cycle. I'm sure if you talk to certain marketing professionals in some of the Open RAN companies, then maybe there's an element of hype. What I would say is I don't see that hype with the engineers that I'm working with day to day, who are implementing the solutions, who are starting to develop the software and the hardware to support it. I think they're very realistic people, and they are moving this technology forward. Final comment, I suppose. There's an ex MIT professor called Roy Amara that I love. He had a quote that we always grossly overestimate the impact of technology in the short term and grossly underestimate it in the long term. And, I think in the sort of timescales from your poll, 2025, mid next decade, we'll just see Open RAN as part of the ecosystem, and it will come along in that time frame.
Okay, if we've got no more comments on the potential hype of Open RAN, we'll move on to the next question. Guy.
Thanks, Ray. Yes, this question just in, and it really relates to what we spoke about earlier today, the ongoing operation of Open RAN deployments. And the question is, and Johannes, maybe I could start by asking you this. Multiple vendors will require multiple maintenance contracts, multiple for hardware, for software, radio unit, etc., which would increase the support and maintenance bill for telcos significantly. What's your view of that?
I think this kind of relates to what Geetha was saying earlier, that there are these costs are already incorporated in terms of what the service providers are paying. And the other fact that I think that can address this is the role of system integrators, right? That can stitch together this solution using Open RAN and make it available to service providers, in a sense, have a single hand to shake, right? So that service providers don't have to deal with multiple vendors. At the end of the day, if a single integrator is making that solution available to a service provider, but in the background, the standard is open, right? And you can have a multi-vendor best-of-breed solution that should actually reduce the cost in the long run. So this is something, it might be new for the service provider industry, but I think in the long run, cost-wise, it is a pro. It's an advantage.
Okay, thank you, Johannes. Unless anybody else wants to comment on that one, I think we should just keep moving on to our next questions, Ray.
Yeah, I just have one thing to add, Guy, if you don't mind. So it kind of goes back to that earlier question, the hype question, right? there's so much of what I call the FUD in this whole thing. I'm not saying that the Openran is going to be the easiest one to implement and that there are no risks at all. That is certainly not what I'm trying to say. But then you look at this, everything from the cost and everything from, multiple vendors and how hard is it going to be to deploy this? Franz mentioned the automation. So automation of thousands and thousands of sites. Is that available today? It's not. And so how do we make that happen? I mean, is this all going to be quite a bit of work? Yes. But can we do it? It may not hit the time frame of say exactly 2023 or 2024. It might be a little bit later, or it might be a little bit earlier with some of the lead customers. So it's all a question of timing. None of these costs are going to it's not like they didn't exist before. It's not that they are going to disappear in the future. I mean, the cost might be on something else, but it's not going to completely disappear. And then innovation will cause other things to appear and other applications and, other opportunities for everybody from the operators to the end consumers. So it's just a matter of time, and it's going to play its course.
Good points. Thanks for making those. Ray, let's move on to our next question.
Okay. Yep, we have a question in here that casts a parallel between the previous efforts to try and disaggregate the back office software within telcos, the OSS and BSS, and how those still ended up being full integrated stacks being deployed. And now, if Openran is deployed in brownfield networks, alongside existing radio access network infrastructure, it needs to be managed by those integrated OSS stacks and communicate with the integrated BSS stacks. So the question is there a risk that Openran will fall the same fate as Open OSS and Open BSS? Is the time spent integrating Openran systems going to potentially be something that holds it back or maybe pushes it off to the side? So any thoughts from the panel on this at all?
I have to say the OSS stacks are not probably my greatest area of expertise, but I think the sort of open source community has already been reducing the level of investment and time necessary to do a lot of that integration, and I think the comments that have previously been made, this isn't a big bang situation where on a Friday you have a proprietary network and on a Monday everything's gone open. It's going to be a gradual filtration into the networks on different regions and different areas, and I think work will have to be put into those aspects of integrating back office applications and stacks. But again, because there is this move towards Openran, the incentive for people to do that, I think, is going to drive those activities forward.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, yes, Johannes.
Yeah, I was going to add, I think that's absolutely right. I think number one, technology has come a long way, right? In the IT space, in the telco space, and second, I think there is a business driver now for service providers. So I think that will play a key role in making sure that this path is successful. I think that the will and the need for such a solution to stay competitive is absolutely critical.
Okay, excellent. And Franz, can I ask, in terms of what Deutsche Telekom has planned, how much of the integration with existing OSS and BSS, how much does that need to be considered?
Bluntly spoken, zero. I was a bit. It took me some time to digest that question because it wouldn't be my first thought to use a legacy OSS to run an Openran, because Open Alliance defines something called the SMO, so the service management and orchestration that works according to cloud principles and is managing is doing model-based orchestration and all these state-of-the-art technologies, which typically your legacy RAN OSS never heard about. So if you try to integrate that one in your legacy OSS, I'm not sure if this is the smartest move you can do. At least we are not considering going that way.
Okay, Guy, I see that the red light has started to flash on our time, but have we got time to squeeze one more question in?
Oh, I think we can do one or two. Let's see how we get on, Ray. There's a couple of viewers are asking a similar question, really, and that is about, the market share. How much Open RAN we can expect to see, because obviously Open RAN spend rather is vast, and there's a huge amount of investment in RAN. Given the duopoly situation that we see in like the European market, for instance, and a single RAN strategy, do you think other vendors have a chance? And what percentage of today's RAN spend do you think will be given over to Open RAN? Obviously, that percentage is going to be movable, and it's going to hopefully increase as we move along through the years. But anyone got any ideas yet of what are we talking about when we look at Open RAN? Are we talking like a 1% of the market here, 10% of the market? What are we perhaps looking at? Who can I pick on to respond to that one first? Franz, very unfortunate, but let me see if I can ask you.
No, that's of course a little bit of a tricky one, because not the least it depends on the speed, how technology gets mature and ready for prime time. But from my perspective, of course, it does not make sense longer term to run your network mixed between Open RAN and black box RAN. So if once you decide to go that route, of course you want to move the whole radio network to an Open RAN architecture. The question is over what time frame. Do you do that in one modernization cycle, which itself in radio, depending on the size of your network, is a multi-year exercise? Or do you need to spread that? It depends on quite many factors, but typically I expect the industry gradually to completely move to Open RAN architectures, and networks only will run both for a limited amount of time, simply for cost reasons. Because if you run legacy and the Open RAN in parallel, of course you have to double invest. So once you start that journey, you want to come to the target, which is a full Open RAN network as soon as possible. But that's not something from my perspective that would even then happen within 1 year or so. So it would be a bit longer exercise.
Great. Well, many thanks for that one. And it does look like this is going to be our last question. So let me give our other guests the opportunity to weigh in on their thoughts on this one. Geetha, what do you think is what percentage are we talking about when we talk about Open RAN?
So we looked at it from a very conservative stand, and also our experiences with one of the key operators in the US who we are rolling out Open RAN and virtual RAN with, at about 20% adoption rate. That is what we are thinking going into the next, say, 5 years, and then increasing after that. Because a lot of the customers are looking at each other, looking at the lead customers, right? And seeing how it goes and what are the lessons learned, and then taking it from there. So based on that, we were guesstimating at about 20% adoption rate for the next 4 to 5 years, and then picking up after that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Colin, any final thoughts about how much of the market Open RAN might be addressing, or timeframes, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I from the poll, I mean, the only figure I dramatically disagreed with was it's ready now. It certainly isn't ready now for 5G, that's for sure, and probably I think maybe 6 to 12 months away from a really deployable legacy network. The other question I think is, what do we define as Openran? Are we talking about a complete end-to-end network being open? Are we talking about aspects of an integrated baseband with front haul being, Oran Alliance 7.2? Is that a full Open RAN? So I think the definitions actually matter to some extent, but the numbers that have been discussed, I don't think we would want to argue against. They sound quite reasonable to me.
Thank you, Colin. And Johannes, any final thoughts from yourself about the extent to which Open RAN might penetrate the radio access network market?
Yeah, I think I agree with Colin in that the Open RAN deployment end-to-end is not going to happen all at the same time. It's going to be gradual. But I think there is going to be a domino effect in a sense that service providers are realizing that what you invest today is going to stick around for a while. So at a minimum, you need to position yourself so that you can take advantage of these new technologies down the line quickly without too much additional investment. So I think that's going to be a factor in terms of the adoption rate.
Great. Well, thanks for those final points. And that is indeed all the time we have for today. A big thank you to all our guests for joining us on the After Show programme. Today's new content is now available to watch on demand here on TelecomTV and will be added to our Openran channel on the website. And we'll be back again tomorrow for another live After Show with more panelists and more guests ready to answer questions from you, our viewers. But before then, we have two panel discussions, one that looks at Openran in mature markets and another one that focuses on test and integration. Plus, Ray, you've got another keynote interview.
Yes, that's right. So today we made our keynote interviews with Diego Tenorio from Vodafone and Sadayuki Abita from NTT Docomo. They went on the site today, so they're available on demand. And from tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. UK time, we've got an interview with Neil McRae. He's Chief Architect at BT. And as ever, Neil was very forthright with his views and shared BT's plans and thoughts around Open RAN. So that's one really worth checking out first thing tomorrow morning and ahead of tomorrow's Q&A.
Yes, I look forward to watching that. Always good to hear what Neil has to say. It should be very revealing. And I also think that Diego is due to join us on the after show as well. And we hope that you can join us again tomorrow. But until then, the after show is over. The sponsored networking bar is out of everything except alcohol-free lager, and the finger food has long since disappeared. So it's off to an overcrowded and overpriced restaurant for us before a late night rendezvous in the hotel bar. Until tomorrow, thank you for watching and goodbye.
The after show was recorded in front of a live online audience.